Right, okay, Shaun, I'm Shaun, that's Katie, and welcome to Hot Takes. Yeah, this is our new show, our new podcast, right, where either I will give a hot take, or you will give a hot take, and then the other one will essentially play devil's advocate.
Other one plays devil's advocate.
So if I give the hot take, you will play the devil's advocate. You might not necessarily agree with what you're saying, but you'll present the argument and I will argue against. There might be ones where you completely wholeheartedly disagree, and then we do have not an argument but a discussion. But ultimately what I would like is people, you all, the subscribers, people who just happen upon our videos, tell us some of your hot takes and we can discuss them in a sort of third party sort of way, unless of course we also feel strongly about those things. And so for the first episode I thought that I would really blow the doors off, get as much hate as humanly possible for myself. So the first hot take that we're going to go with is that the Phantom Menace is better than A New Hope. That is my hot take.
Wow.
Yeah, there we go. The Phantom Menace is better than...
So is that
A
something
New
that
Hope.
you agree with? Is that what
That's
you're
something
saying?
that I think. Yeah, that's my hot take.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is that why you said you wouldn't get a lot of hate?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. It's opinion. Right? We don't all have to fall out. We're not gonna...
Yeah, and you're not saying that A New Hope's terrible.
I'm not saying New Hope's terrible. There's no bad Star Wars films apart from the 3 that came after the sequels. They're bad. They're bad Star Wars films. All the rest of them are great. But in my personal opinion, Star Wars: The Phantom Menace is better than A New Hope. So just as a sort of opening argument, right, and you can argue against this, the easy ones, right, that you can't, I don't think you can really argue against.
Okay.
Number 1, lightsabers. You know,
Okay.
if there's one thing that I think every Star Wars fan has to acknowledge, it's that lightsabers were never cooler than they were in the prequels.
They were cooler in the prequels than they were in the
Than the everything. The only lightsaber, the only argument that I think the best lightsaber scene outside of the prequels is Darth Vader in Rogue One. I don't think maybe Luke in The Mandalorian, but you know,
Yeah.
there's something about a lightsaber on lightsaber.
I mean, in the trilogies and in the Okay.
But there's something about lightsaber on lightsaber combat that's just awesome. You know, and I'm talking about Darth Maul. I'm talking about Anakin and Obi-Wan, Mace Windu and Palpatine, all of the Jedi in the Petronaki Stadium.
Yeah.
It was fantastic. But we're talking specifically
Phantom Menace.
Phantom Menace. Yeah. So Qui-Gon Jinn is a brilliant character. I think the main problems that people have with the Phantom Menace are Jar Jar Binks, obviously,
Yeah.
and there's quite a lot of it that's really unexplained, and it almost seems like a film that should have had another film before it. The film before
Right.
it should have just been called Darth Plagueis,
Yeah.
because
And like the state of like the Senate and stuff and yeah.
But apart from that, you know,
CGI and CGI.
CGI was a bit they didn't.
Quality wasn't. I didn't feel like was there, was it?
No, but then I would argue that it's generally accepted, isn't it, that the best one in the original trilogy is either Empire or Return of the Jedi, isn't it? As far most of the Star Wars fans I've met, none of them actually say that A New Hope is the best in the original.
Yeah. Yeah, fair enough.
Because obviously, if you ask most people, A New Hope is your generic fantasy film. A prince saves a princess from a tower that's guarded by a evil wizard. You know, and he has to get help from a good wizard that helps him. You know, and there's that sort of thing. But then when you look at the rest of the original trilogy, Empire obviously broke everything, and in a good way. And Return of the Jedi was a really good ending.
Yeah.
Well, it should have been a really good ending.
You've got to have the little jabs, haven't you?
Oh yeah. There'll be a lot of jabs at the sequel trilogy in this. But then I think, considering that, Return of the Jedi came out, and then in 1999 Phantom Menace came out, I think instantly it set the stakes of what this trilogy was going to be. Because within the first few scenes, it explains to you who the Jedi are, what they are now compared to what they were in the originals.
Mm-hmm.
You've got your scenes with Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon where they're fighting all the droids, and the Nemoidians of the Trade Federation are too scared to even go in the room with them.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, I don't know, something. You also have to remember about this is that I went and saw this film when it came out in the cinema, and as a young boy, the only thing I cared about was Darth Maul.
I think because I wonder if a part of it is that nostalgia for you because you didn't grow up watching the originals. I feel like there would be a lot of older fans, like Dad, for example, who would argue the originals were better, maybe because they might not realise it, but because that was their childhood.
Yeah.
In the same way the prequels were yours.
Mm-hmm.
I get what you mean. I think the issue with Phantom Menace, and again, people might not want to admit it's tarnished by like so many things that like it was out of its control. You know what I mean? So like, people just say the prequels were just bad in general because of this, and this. But it's like when you look at the individual films, actually, Phantom Menace wasn't that.
You can generally pinpoint the really bad things in each Star Wars film.
Mm-hmm.
There's only really the likes of Empire where there isn't all that bad that you can think of, except you could argue C-3PO is very, very in Empire. Yeah, it's just annoying.
But I mean, he's annoying.
Yeah,
he's
just an annoying droid, isn't it? Yeah, but like you were saying about the trilogy, the prequel trilogy, everyone always says is that the romance isn't very good. But if that's the case, then there's not really all that much romance in Phantom Menace, other than there's this child boy who fancies Natalie Portman, because what child boy doesn't fancy Natalie Portman at that point? Do you know what I mean? And
I think though, and it's at the time when it came out, it got a lot. Even like the actor that played the young Anakin got a lot of hate, like Hayden Christensen did later on. He got a lot of hate just because he was playing Anakin Skywalker, and he needed to eventually become Darth Vader. And I think it kind of set it up in a bad way because people were already critiquing it before even seeing it. And I don't care what anyone says, if you go into a film finding critiques, you're probably not going to like it. You know what I mean? You're always going to find an issue with it.
Yeah, I think that's a brilliant point actually, because the originals did a fantastic job, but they also did quite a bad job in terms of they presented a character called Darth Vader, who we found out was called Anakin Skywalker. And as soon as people knew who was playing him, whether it was the young lad, I can't remember the young lad, I think he's called Jake Lloyd or something, and Hayden Christensen, they both got a lot of hate, like you were saying.
Yeah.
But it's actually another hot take that we're going to do a different time about Hayden Christensen. But yeah, like you were saying, that they had preconceived notions about them before they even saw them. And I don't think, I'm sure it's Jake Lloyd, I think that's his name. I don't think there's anything wrong with him as young Anakin.
He was just a kid, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And he was likeable. You were like, oh, he's a little cutie. Because at this point, he's not evil. He isn't Darth Vader.
No.
That comes later. He is meant to be this just like little boy that loves his mum, loves pod racing, and he wants to go off and fly away in the stars. That's what he wants.
Yep.
It's not. So I think, and I don't care. Again, I don't care what anyone says. The fans that hated on a child.
Yep.
Is like, it's ridiculous. What makes you think you can hate on a child just because? Fair enough, you might love the universe that much, but it doesn't warrant that kind of behaviour.
No. So another thing that I would say about A New Hope, one of the main reasons everyone says that A New Hope's one of the best ones is because they say it's the most important. It started everything. It's kind of like, well, okay, yeah, if you want to look at each film as sort of their impact to the trilogy, fair enough, it's probably the most important of all. Well, actually, I would still argue that Empire is the most important of all three films.
It's still really good at it. It set the stakes.
It set the stakes, and it was completely new compared to what had come out at that point.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about pure story, just story here. and I would argue that A New Hope is the worst of the originals. I think Empire is the best. Return of the Jedi is the second, and A New Hope's the third. Again, this isn't me saying that I think A New Hope's a bad film. I don't think A New Hope's a bad film.
You think just if you were to rank them, those three films, you would put Empire first, and then Return of the Jedi then.
And I would also put Phantom Menace above A New Hope, and I would also put Revenge of the Sith above New Hope. I feel like Revenge of the Sith wouldn't be as big of a controversial one. I think a lot more people...
I think people more, now, especially nowadays, accept that Revenge of the Sith was a good film.
Yeah. It's just the Phantom Menace and rightfully people don't like Attack of the Clones because Hayden Christensen and Natalie Portman aren't very good together.
And that was like the story, wasn't it?
But Anakin, with every other character they'd interact with, I don't think is all that bad.
I think though, like, it is a shame, but they just didn't. I don't know. A part of me always wondered if it's just that they didn't have good chemistry, or if it's just George Lucas is writing for the characters weren't that good.
Yeah.
I think it's probably a bit both.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing, isn't it? But that when you look at it, again, from objective standpoint, George Lucas, sorry everyone, isn't that great at writing romance. Han Solo and Leia isn't all that great of a romantic story. Like, there's nothing about them in A New Hope other than Han Solo gives her a bit of a wink, when he's getting his medal. In Empire, the majority of the film is basically Han Solo just being Han Solo going, yeah, you kind of fancy me, don't you? You kind of fancy me. Until she suddenly decides that she loves him. And don't get me wrong, it's not a bad thing. You know, it's not a bad thing. And then Return of the Jedi, they essentially just swap it so that it's actually Han Solo chasing Leia this time, and it was like, okay, that's great. But
I think it was just different, wasn't it? Because that was Anakin's arc, wasn't it? A big part of it was him falling in love with Padme, and that ends up being what leads him to becoming Darth Vader. So it needed to be so important, and the fact that it wasn't good and oftentimes really cringy, it did ruin it at times, especially in Attack of the Clones.
Attack of the Clones is the worst part. When every time I watch Attack of the Clones, I have to skip the parts with Hayden Christensen and Natalie Portman. But I think they learned from that in Revenge of the Sith, because there's not loads of, off the top of my head, I can think of 3 or 4 scenes that have Natalie Portman and Hayden Christensen in together. So when they see each other, when they do that cringy, so love has blinded you thing, the dream. He has one where he's playing a little Game Boy and he talks about Obi-Wan. Comes to see her when after he's killed all the Jedi, and then Mustafar.
Yeah.
So there's only, off the top of my head, that's 6 scenes that I can think of.
They're very short as well, weren't they?
Yeah, compared to Attack of the Clones, where they spend pretty much the entire film together talking about sand.
Yeah.
But anyway, Phantom Menace. Let's talk about other things. Everyone always says that A New Hope was groundbreaking. Right. Phantom Menace was also groundbreaking. Because let's face it, up till that point, and this is again, we're going back to one of the simplest things that I don't think anyone anywhere will argue with me on. Right. Up to that point, we saw lightsabers as just your sort of, it's either red, it's either green, or it's blue. It's basically a sword, right? And then Phantom Menace happened, and George Lucas basically went, well, forget about that. It's not just one sword. Here's Darth Maul. He's got a dual. He's got the dual swords.
Yeah.
And then add to that the fact that John Williams decided to destroy the universe. It's kind of like they didn't need to go that hard, but they did. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like.
That is a really cool scene though, when it's like they're running and door opens and he's just there. That is a cool scene.
I watched loads of things where people were like, behind the scenes you can see them when he does the little hood thing. Looks like Natalie Portman was good shaking. Said she was getting goosebumps at him. It's like, you're doing something right when all you have to do is look up and everyone's cacking themselves. But it's kind of like, when you the story, Phantom Menace didn't do what the sequels did, and I would argue that every prequel is better than every sequel, even Attack of the Clones. Right, and that is, it told a different story, and it also it did what the sequels tried to do, which was it's subverted. Right, because the originals, Sith are in charge, the Empire is in control. At the beginning of this one, it's actually the other way around.
Mm-hmm.
The Republic's in control, the Jedi are the Guardians, and and everything's. And I think it did a really, really great job of showing you not only what the Jedi are, it gave you the seeds of why they end up falling. And it also gives you a great Jedi in Qui-Gon Jinn who basically sees those seeds and goes, I don't want to be, I don't want to be a part of the council. And I just think Phantom Menace also did a much better job of exploring the Jedi and the Sith than A New Hope did. Go back and watch A New Hope, because the real lore about the Jedi and the Sith doesn't come until Empire.
I think it's because they didn't really write it at that point, though, did he? A lot of it, and you hear about George Lucas talking about it, he changed his mind quite a lot when doing the originals.
Mm-hmm.
It felt like the prequels, he came in with it with like, okay, here's the story, here's why this is happening. But I do think, though, it would have been better if there was a little bit more to them. More like backstory, more the prequels, okay. More backstory, more like explanation to certain things.
Yeah. Yeah. There's I would say the main aspect of Phantom Menace that isn't explored is Anakin, where he comes from, where this virgins has come from.
The prophecy. Do you know what I mean? They're like, he's the chosen one. It's like, well, what is the chosen one?
Yeah.
And why that's such a big deal, and
why him being older is so
is
bad.
An issue, and like the Jedi and maybe like their kind of because I feel like the prequels, they present the Jedi as the good guys, but are they really good guys at this point? There are some arguments that maybe they aren't as good as what you might consider, and what they used to, but that's a pivotal part of certain characters like Count Dooku.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's like,
that's a good point,
you don't explore that. You learn about that through other things like Clone Wars and stuff like that, because they're kind of adding it in.
Yeah.
And so you have to kind of like, okay, if you were just watching it from face value, the prequels, I feel like there was more information that was needed.
Yeah. And obviously there's a very big point that everyone always argues when it comes, especially to Phantom Menace, and it's politics. It's very political.
Yeah.
And again, it's. I don't think anyone would have minded, except it needed a bit more explanation. Certain political parts of it needed to be explained.
I feel like the whole separatists thing needed, because I remember one of the first few times I started watching it, and I didn't get that.
Yeah.
Who the separatists were, why it was such a big deal.
Well, it's interesting that they present the separatists as the bad guys when essentially what the separatists are is. Oh, I nearly said it. I probably shouldn't say it, actually. Because that will probably
offend lots of people.
Trigger a lot of people.
It's weird because the separatists...
They basically just want independence. That's what they want.
Yeah, they think...
they don't enjoy certain political moves against them. They don't want to be... They don't think it's particularly democratic anymore. They think it's corrupt. They don't want to be a part of it.
Which isn't a bad thing, but again, something you don't know and you don't really... I don't feel like it. I don't know if it really goes into enough detail as how that they're essentially a tool.
Yeah, they're being manipulated as much as the Republic is.
But I feel like you go back and you watch it and you're like, oh, that makes sense because the Emperor's like, he's like doing all these things and you're like, oh yeah. But then sometimes I think, do I do that because I know already that's because I've watched all these other shows? Yeah. But then if you just have the people that are just watching the films, do they actually get that this was all part of the plan? That he orchestrated essentially the separatists, and that Count Dooku was kind of, the person that was helping them. And
that's another thing, glad you mentioned. There's no Emperor in A New Hope. We don't meet the big bad. Whereas what Phantom Menace does is really cleverly, if you watched it from the beginning instead of watching it from A New Hope, you would instantly, like, without knowing anything about it, you wouldn't. I don't think you would be able to tell. Well, you probably would actually if you had a brain cell, but you can see how Palpatine manipulates everything.
Yeah.
And like the more you think about it, the more you can see straight away. As soon as he finds out that Anakin's the one that blew up the trade blockade, straight away he's like, "Oh, we'll watch your career. You know, I'm gonna like you." And then throughout the rest of the prequels, you see the fruits of that manipulation on Anakin. But I do agree with you that it doesn't highlight the extent of Palpatine's manipulations.
I feel like it would have. I feel like if anything, it would have just added to his character. But then also, I feel like in that same sense, we would have had to have explored Darth Plagueis a bit more because it was his plan.
Yeah, and he actually starts a lot of it.
He was alive during Phantom Menace, which not a lot of people actually know because they don't really tell you.
Yeah. Well, he dies at the same time as.
Yeah, but he's in it.
He's not in it, but he's alive.
He's alive at that time. You know what I mean?
Would have been so cool if they had a little nod to Darth Plagueis. Just a moon, just on the landing craft when Anakin arrives. That would have been cool.
I feel like it would have been, because imagine though, because it's like the whole point is that, like, the Sith, the two rules, only two of them. He sends like Darth Maul off, and then all of a sudden, like, someone just appears and he's got the Horde, and you're like, how many of them is there? And then there's like Count Dooku, and you're like, who? Yeah. You know what I mean? And I feel like
I would happily have a show with just about Darth Plagueis. I think he's one of the coolest Sith that's ever been alive. But we're not talking about that. Yeah, I suppose I should acknowledge one of the worst parts about it, which was Jar Jar Binks. And obviously Jar Jar Binks was put in for children. That goes without saying. Yeah. Which is why people now are sort of like, when they talk about the Phantom Menace, they make memes about Jar Jar Binks, and they don't particularly care that he's in it. Because the majority of the people nowadays who watch these films grew up with the Phantom Menace.
Yeah.
Which means they were essentially children watching Jar Jar Binks, get his face stuck in a blooming power binder and, all that nonsense.
Electrocuting his tongue and that, so he's like...
Yeah, and his ridiculous 5 somersaults.
Yeah.
But I would say the worst part about the Phantom Menace is Jar Jar Binks, and that they didn't quite perfect, like, do enough improvement on the special effects. The lightsabers are still a bit grainy. They're not like Revenge of the Sith lightsabers where they're absolutely beautiful looking.
I think just George Lucas wanted to be groundbreaking again, and with all of this like CGI and stuff, because he didn't have that when he was doing the originals. A lot of it had to, they had to like make sets and do all that stuff. So I feel like you went a bit overboard with the CGI.
Yeah.
And it's just, it kind of, I feel like it does. At the time, maybe people really enjoyed it, but when you watch it now, it hasn't really held up.
No, I would agree.
I feel
Phantom Menaces and Attack of the Clones as well.
Yeah.
Both of their CGI haven't held up as well as Revenge of the Sith has.
Yeah, Revenge of the Sith was better, but Phantom Menace and Clone Wars was not Clone Wars, Attack of the Clones.
Yep. Clone Wars is still awesome.
Yeah.
So a few more things that I would say. One, Ewan McGregor is Obi-Wan Kenobi. A hot take dash. Second part, Ewan McGregor's better as Obi-Wan than Alec Guinness. Come at me, everyone. I don't care. I think he is.
He was a different type of Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Different type of Obi-Wan.
This was like, Phantom Menace was still like, was he? He was like Padawan, Jedi Knight.
No, he was Padawan.
Padawan. He was like, and he was kind of just still figuring everything out. He wasn't the old, wise, withered, Obi-Wan Kenobi that we see.
But he also serves as a good tool in Phantom Menace of why the Jedi will fall, because he judges everyone. He judges Jar Jar Binks when he first meets him. He judges Anakin. He says that they're going to pick up another pathetic life form before he's even met Anakin. And ultimately him and Anakin become almost the two sort of
brothers.
I was going to say probably the main characters of the whole trilogy. Arguably, I would say Anakin and Obi-Wan. But it also presents characters like Qui-Gon Jinn again, who's a brilliant character. You meet Mace Windu, who, although he's not quite given the rub that he gets in Attack of the Clones, because that's when he's at his best. You also see Yoda again. You see loads of interesting life in a different way, that it's not like the Mos Eisley Cantina. It's like, this is the Jedi Council sitting there and they all look weird, but they all look cool. Like, I want to know what the guy with the big, long white neck and really small bobblehead can do. I want to know what he is. I want to know who Kiadi-Mundi is. I didn't realise at the time that I would hate Kiadi-Mundi, but, you know, I wanted to know who he was. Yeah, I just think there was, and I didn't mind the political side of it, actually.
I don't mind it either, because I think it gives you good insight into the galaxy at the time.
And there's not really any. Is there any politics in A New Hope? There's the talks of the rebellion, and
I guess that is the politics, isn't it? Is the Empire is this, you know, big.
The overlords.
Yeah, and then you have the rebellion that are fighting that, and that's about it, isn't it? You don't really know.
Yeah, I suppose Alderaan gets destroyed, so. Is that political? Bail Organa is killed.
I mean, it's mass genocide, isn't it? I don't know if it's quite political.
He's very political.
Yeah. It didn't really need much, because the whole point was that there wasn't. You would argue
democracy's gone at that point.
Yeah, it's just the Empire just oppressing everyone, isn't it? It's not like...
Yeah.
And that is it. Whereas in Phantom Menace, it's like...
Yeah, also, now that I think about it, I'm going to be very satirical here. Why is it that no one talks about Phantom Menace as having a strong female character? In this day and age where everything's about strong female this and strong female that, you've got a woman who initially she runs away because she's being completely overwhelmed by an invasion. Right? She tries to go and get help from the Republic. The Republic's completely corrupt and full of bureaucrats. Can't help them. What does she do? Does she sit and cry? No, she goes, you know what? To hell with this. I'm going to go and fight for my home. And that's exactly what she does. She goes and fights. Why is it not talked about more?
Because I feel like, right, and people might disagree with me, but I feel like Padme as a character got looked down on after Revenge of the Sith. Because she essentially dies from a broken heart, isn't she? And people are like, oh, she's just, you know, weak and pathetic, and she just dies straight away. Like, no, I mean, she did get, you know, she was pregnant heavily with two twins, and
she does still have a bit of a crap death, to be fair.
I know, but you can actually die from that, you know.
Yeah, I know, but
it's like I know it is, but that doesn't take away from what she's done.
No.
And it's like, it's sad, because it's like she's just like, she loses the will to live because the man she's in love with, like, becomes Darth Vader and murdered younglings and all this stuff. Would you want to have children with someone that murdered younglings? I think not. So
I hope not.
Well, there you go. So I think stuff like that is probably, people are like, when they look at Padme, they're like, oh, she just died, didn't she? She was just Anakin's love interest, and then she died pathetically, and that's probably what people look at. But in Phantom Menace specifically, she wasn't.
She's really good at Phantom Menace.
She was really good.
Yeah.
The whole, you know, her, like, even though you obviously know it's her, because believe it or not, Natalie Portman and Keira Knightley don't look that much alike.
Yeah.
So you could tell that there was, you know, she was. What was I going to say? You can tell that, you know, she's kind of like in disguise, and she's doing this and that.
Yeah.
But it was still good. It wasn't like bad. Her character at that point wasn't bad at all.
No, I think that's the time when she's at her best is in Phantom Menace. Also, just as a side note, I didn't have a clue what was going on with her and Keira Knightley when I first saw that film. And for a good 5 or 6 years, I didn't have a clue what the whole point of Keira Knightley was. Even though she says, you know, decoy, royal bodyguard.
Yeah.
You know, I was like,
really?
What is she doing? Who is the Queen? That's what I would be sitting there going.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I thought you meant you didn't realise they changed.
No, I realised they changed, but
I was like, well,
initially it was like that thing in the side of your head where you're like,
which one's actually the Queen?
No, when I first went to see it, I was like what you were saying there, because I was only a child when I first went to see it.
Okay.
A very young child. I was sitting there going, that doesn't look like her. I thought that was what. And then when it gets to the bit where she reveals that it's actually a decoy, I didn't understand that either.
Because you were too young to understand.
Because I was too young to understand. I think I got to about the age of 10 before I realised what actually
a decoy was.
What was happening. Yeah.
I thought you just meant that you just didn't realise you were different people. I was
I think I did realise they were different people, but at the same time,
you just didn't understand what it meant.
I didn't know why they were different people.
Okay, fair enough.
But that was my hot take. Let me open the black book and
I don't.
What do you think?
I don't know if I agree.
Have I changed your mind?
I don't know. I don't think Phantom Menace is a bad film. I don't think A New Hope's a bad film. I don't know where I would put both of them. They both kind of lie level with me. Because they're both important to the respective trilogy, aren't they?
Yeah, just the franchise in general. I think they're both important. Yeah.
You know, like A New Hope does a brilliant job of setting up the originals, just like Phantom Menace does a good job at setting up the prequels.
I also think Phantom Menace would be looked upon better if Attack of the Clones had been better. Because I think one of the reasons that A New Hope is looked on so well is because the film that came after it was probably the best film in Star Wars.
I think it's just if you're going on story and writing. See, I don't know. I feel like I'd maybe still put A New Hope above it. Because if you're going on story, writing, and characters, not about look, production, all that stuff, I'd still probably put A New Hope above it because of Jar Jar Binks as a character. If you're going on, you know what I mean? Those say like story,
I suppose, yeah.
characters, that I would probably put because Jar Jar.
On story? I'm not sure about story. Maybe
Both.
Characters, arguably, I would concede because of Jar Jar Binks. Because I would argue that A New Hope and Phantom Menace doesn't have any bad characters in, except Jar Jar Binks in Phantom Menace.
The thing is, though, and like it's the structure of the story is very similar.
Oh yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like people might disagree, but it's very true. If you look at the stories, it's it's very similar.
Yep.
So it's I don't know. I feel like they kind of I would say maybe level / maybe A New Hope slightly above Phantom Menace for me.
Yeah.
Just because of Jar Jar Binks.
So I haven't changed your mind with my hot take.
I agree with it. I agree with what you were saying. I think it does get looked down upon a lot by people, and it gets forgotten maybe. But I would still.
I'll have to try harder on the next one.
I would still maybe put A New Hope above it.
Okay, I'll have to try harder on the next one. Right. Okay. So that was my first hot take. Let me know what you think down in the comments. But because this is Star Wars, I feel like I have to say this: be nice. People who are just horrible to each other. If there's if you want to debate each other, that's fine. By all means, do that. If you want to debate me, that's fine. Be nice, because if you're not nice, I will literally just delete the comment. Simple as that. The idea of this is to be, at least slightly thought-provoking without tearing at people's throats. But also, let us know some hot takes that you have, because we would like to discuss them. And who knows, in the future, we might even get you on and talk to you as well. That'd be cool, wouldn't it? Get some of our subscribers or some other people on to talk about it. The next episode, do you have a hot take you want to give, or do you want me to give another one so you can give a bit more time?
You just told me about this today, so I haven't really thought about it.
Right, so we'll do another one of my hot takes before we get one of yours. Okay, so my next hot take is this. I've got a lot, I'm just picking. The next one will be the age of the superhero has passed. That's the next hot take.
Wow.
So I'll give you time to come up with your arguments. But apart from that, thank you for watching. Like the video, subscribe, ding the bell to be notified when we upload. We upload every day. Katie, anything you would like to say? No?
No.
How much hate do you think I'm going to get? Quite a bit, yeah. May the force be with you.
I've always wondered why he always has his shirt open like that when it's never like that in the movie.
He's not quite that jacked, is he?
No, it's never like that in the movie.
No.
Does he even have short sleeves in the movie? He doesn't, does he? Does he? No.
Well, they're sort of midway on there.
It's just...
Do you know what's interesting? When you look at the characters on there, who's on there the most? I mean, Anakin's on there 1, 2, 3, 4 times.
Luke, 1, 2.
Luke's
3.
He's not in there. There. There.
2,
there.
3, 4.
Oh yeah, 4. Yeah. Han Solo 1, 2. 3. Han Solo's on there 3. Leia. 1, 2.
3.
Chewbacca. 1, 2, 3. R2 and C3PO, are they on there?
Obi-Wan. 1, 2, 3.
3. C3PO and R2
Did you
D2.
count 4?
Oh yeah, 4, yeah.
Did you count
Oh,
that
there,
for Anakin?
5, yeah. So, okay, so Anakin's on there the most, we can say that.
I feel like that's the same.
Anakin's on there the most, and so he should be. Because it's called the Skywalker Saga because of him.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for watching. May the Force be with
To be
you.
honest, I was half expecting like C3PO.
Let me sign out the video. Let me sign out the video. Thank you for watching, and may the Force be with you.
Why'd you hit me with that? I actually been hurt.
I need to know.